daw po ulit natin. Sabihin lang po natin that
Ladies and gentlemen, the plenary will start in 5 minutes. May we request for everyone to please take your seat and settle down. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. We are about to get started, so may I request for everyone to please take your seat and settle down. The plenary is right around the corner. How is everyone doing today? Welcome back. Now, I haven't seen you all day, so allow me to wish you all a good morning. And I just wanted to get an insight on what took place last night. So, did everyone have a good time? Yes, okay, good to know. Now that that is out of the way, back to business. I just really wanted to find out. So, welcome back, everyone. I hope you all had a refreshing coffee break and, more importantly, truly insightful and engaging discussions from our breakout sessions earlier. Again, allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Jelly Victor. A pleasure to be your host for day 4, the final day of the International Competition Network Annual Conference 2026. Now, we have covered a wide range of topics, rich exchanges, practical experiences, and fresh perspectives that continue to deepen our shared understanding of competition policy in action. I hope you also had a chance to connect with fellow delegates and exchange ideas along the way. I hope you've had ample time to do that. Now we shift our focus to our first plenary session for the morning. We now move to the Merger Working Group Plenary entitled Navigating Through the Ever-Changing Economic and Political Landscape. Are merger control policies flexible enough. In today's increasingly volatile global environment, economic and political shifts are placing new pressures on merger control frameworks. These developments are challenging long-standing approaches and raising important questions about flexibility, resilience, and adaptability in merger review. In this session, we will explore how these evolving dynamics are shaping merger enforcement and whether current legal and policy frameworks remain fit for purpose or whether further recalibration may be needed. Our distinguished panel will also share experiences from their respective jurisdictions on how they are responding to these emerging challenges in practice. Leading the discussion is our moderator from the Competition Bureau Canada, Ms. Jean Pratt. A round of applause, please. Do I have that right, Jean? Okay. She is joined by our distinguished speakers, starting with Ms. Cani Fernandez of the Comisión Nacional de los Mercados y la Competencia, Spain. We also have Mr. Benoit Couret of the Competition Authority, France. Bonjour, monsieur. Mr. Ed G. Chatani of the Japan Fair Trade Commission. Ms. Peta Stevenson, NGA, Australian Competition and Consumer Commission. And Mr. V. Pin Nuga of the Competition Commission, Mauritius. Now that everyone is here, let us begin this session, and over to you, Ms. Pratt.
Thank you very much, and I'm amazed to see how many people are actually in this room. That's got to be a sign of this panel and how much you want to hear what they have to say. But before we get going, I just want to say a huge thank you to the Philippine Competition Commission. What an amazing event last night and throughout the last few days. And we're very happy to be rounding out what was an incredible conference. It's an honor to moderate this very prescient session with a panel of experts from around the world to provide their perspectives on the ever important front line of merger control during a period where agencies are looking to provide as much predictability and consistency as possible in the context of a constantly shifting world with many potentially competing and complex challenges. That's a bit to navigate, but we're very lucky to have this group of experts to help us figure all this out. They include 4 experienced agency heads who've been on the front lines providing vision, strategy, and keen insight, leading their organization's efforts to inform competition and enforcement policy discussions and adapt through constant change, along with one very experienced practitioner who's been advising businesses through uncertain times as our approaches adapt. To my left is Cani Fernandez, President of the National Commission of Markets and Competition since June 2020. To her left is, of course, Benoit Couret, President of the French Autorité de la Concurrence since 2022, and also Chair of the OECD Competition Committee since January of 2025. Next to him is Vipin Nagar, Executive Director of the Competition Commission of Mauritius since August of 2025, and Chair of COMESA since August of 2024. Next to him is Peta Stevenson, a partner at Mallisons. She is an Australian Competition and Consumer Commission NGA who practices in all areas of competition advice and litigation. And last but certainly not least, we have Chair Ijita Chatani of the Japan Fair Trade Commission, who was appointed in May of 2025. For the session this morning, I have some questions for our panelists to help us understand the role of merger control and some of the unique challenges that are being considered in jurisdictions and also challenges that are being faced in merger reviews more generally. If time allows, you're not all off the hook. We will be asking you some questions at the end with a few quick hitter questions where we will be using a polling, so watch the screens for the QR code in a few minutes. But to start, let's talk about the role of merger control. Across jurisdictions, competition agencies are asked to support broader competitiveness and growth objectives while remaining true to established legal tests. President Kani, do you see a way that merger control could incorporate these objectives effectively?
Thank you very much, Anne. It is true that over the last years, the changes in the geopolitical landscape have fostered the debate on the interplay between industrial policy and competition policy in a very intensive way. After the Letta and Draghi reports in Europe, for example, the discussion on EU competitiveness goals and the need for Europe to step up to avoid falling behind in the world has been present in almost every international conference that I have attended. And in this context, competition authorities have been repeatedly asked to play a role, to contribute to this common gain. The review of the EU merger guidelines has been seen by many as the perfect occasion to provide an answer. And last Thursday, the European Commission published its much awaited draft merger guidelines for public consultation. From what I have been able to review so far, the text does offer a proposed response to many of the questions we have been debating over the past months. As I shared recently in a keynote speech that I did at the University of Mannheim, in my view, the deepest disagreements in contemporary antitrust are mainly about theology, about the ends of antitrust. And that is why I was not surprised when I saw that the first title of the 98 pages of the draft guidelines was on the role of EU merger control. The role of EU merger control, according to the draft guidelines, is no doubt about safeguarding an effective competition, but the draft guidelines also state that EU merger control contributes to economic growth, investment, and innovation. It strengthens the competitiveness and resilience of the EU economy in the face of shocks and geopolitical shifts, reducing dependencies. It also protects innovation and investment competition, which support resilience, economic growth, and accelerates industrial capabilities and transformation, notably in critical technologies and inputs or in defense markets. And it also says that it allows for the preservation of green innovation competition, which supports sustainability and contributes to maintaining the balance of power that is essential to democratic societies. And it gives the example of that limiting concentration in the media sector. For example, it supports diversity and plurality of information. So competition stimulates productivity because competition does not weaken companies but gives them more muscle to compete. The draft guidelines concur and they state that stronger competition generally not only delivers lower prices but also tends to stimulate greater productivity, investment and innovation. But having said that, the draft guidelines acknowledge that at the same time the global geopolitical and trade context has changed, and that industrial scale and global competitiveness have become increasingly important. Thus, to reflect that reality, the approach to balancing different possible effects of a merger needs to be re-examined. So, regarding a particular word that has been in the media and in the mouth of everyone, scale, in particular, the draft guidelines state that the assessment of merger should give adequate weight to scale, innovation, investment, and resilience as pro-competitive factors that can benefit from a degree of consolidation. In line with the Draghi report, the guidelines state that transactions that bring about increased scale and consolidation can be reviewed positively. So this only confirms that competition and industrial policy are complementary, and therefore competition authorities, competition enforcers can support European industrial policy goals. The draft guidelines affirm that by fulfilling its legal mandate to prevent mergers that result in a significant impediment of effective competition, EU merger control supports the EU broader policy objectives, including the competitiveness and resilience of the internal market. So the draft guidelines bring forward proposed changes in policy and enforcement approach that can certainly contribute to the objective of increasing competitiveness, but it does so while preserving our existing framework, and I think this is a very important point, the significant impediment to effective competition, the SIG test. The focus is still on market power. So the draft guidelines confirm that the EC bears the burden of establishing whether a merger overall gives rise to the SIG, and in doing so, it shall take into account both the anti-competitive and pro-competitive effects. This is one of the novelties that I would like to streamline, the introduction of a parallel to the theory of harm framework that was used in the assessment of anti-competitive effects. Now we have also the theory of benefits, and the guidelines encourage parties to come forward as soon as possible when they are proposing a theory of benefit. Indeed, according to the draft, if the parties consider that the merger gives rise to efficiencies, they must articulate and substantiate a theory of benefit. During months, there have been calls for greater account of impact on innovation and investment in merger control. The draft guidelines deliver to this call, in my view, on both ends, on the theory of harm and on the theory of benefit. Indeed, innovation and investment appear in the draft guidelines both as a sword and as a shield. I do recommend the parts consecrated to investment and innovation, because there are some clarifications on how innovation should be, and how investment as well should be considered. Conversely, beyond the traditional direct efficiencies, the draft identify dynamic efficiencies. I'm not going to tackle in this because I think Benoit is going to address some in his talk, some of the efficiencies. So I will end by saying that the draft guidelines have endorsed the need of a more forward-looking approach, in particular in the assessment of efficiencies, but not only. And of course, there are many other aspects that I could highlight, but I would like by including a note that is not related to the guidelines, but a reflection that I would like also to make is that we should be realistic about the impact of the guidelines, because competition is surely doing its part to contribute to the EU industrial policy goals. And that is something that I have mentioned many times, including last March with Benoit and Mata in Snoop and Andreas Munt in front of the European Parliament. No matter how many mergers these new guidelines allow to clear, the resulting entity post-transaction will never become a European scale company if it does not arrive to a truly European market in which to compete. If it cannot compete for a market of 450 million potential customers of clients, then it will never reap the full benefits and the competitiveness needed for these economies of scale. So in a market where still telecoms are fragmented because the spectrum is still at national scale, banking, where despite having a single currency, we do not have a true capital market union, transport, where we are still struggling in having several competitors in different markets, and energy, and this is something that I feel very in my heart because I am also the energy regulator, where without more interconnections, we cannot achieve a true energy market and thus improve our prices and increase our resilience, and we cannot talk about scale in full words. So with this note, with this critical note, I stop my first intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. I think all of us in Canada can say, we like to say competition and competitiveness are complements. But the front line of merger, how that plays out in an actual merger review, particularly for us in Canada where we have a prosecutorial model, looking at the forward-looking longer-term effects, there can be a tension between the evidence that you have to look at and the decision-making in a merger to make sure that you are making sure those competition and competitiveness are indeed complements. Chairman Chetani, how have recent changes in the economic and political environment created new challenges for merger review in Japan?
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to express my sincere appreciation to the Philippine Competition Commission for its dedicated efforts in preparing this year's annual conference. I would also like to thank Acting Commissioner Jean Pratt of the Competition Bureau Canada as well as her team for organizing this session. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to engage in an open and meaningful discussion with all of you today. Turning to your question, recent changes in the economic and political environment have not led to any fundamental shift in our overall approach to merger review in Japan. At the same time, we fully recognize broader structural changes such as the need to promote innovation for long-term growth, the shrinking domestic market due to population decline, and the need to respond to increasingly globalized markets. And we take these factors into account in our review. Among these developments, economic security has become a particularly important issue. Intensifying competition over advanced technologies as well as strength policy measures across jurisdictions have brought about a major shift in the environment surrounding businesses. In this context, there have been concerns that when businesses consider information exchange, joint conduct, or restructuring, uncertainty about potential antitrust risks may discourage necessary dialogue among them. In response, in November last year, we published a casebook together with relevant government agencies outlining our views on the Anti-Monopoly Act related to economic security issues, along with hypothetical cases. In this casebook, one point particularly relevant to merger control is that in sectors where international competition is active, we conduct a competitive assessment based on cross-border markets and fully take into account competitive pressure from overseas firms. As a result, even where merging parties have a high share in the domestic market, we assess mergers in light of the actual competitive conditions. This approach is consistent with that of major competition authorities, including those in Europe and the United States, and is internationally well established. A concrete example is a merger between Imabari Shipbuilding and Japan Imari United. In this case, given that customers of ocean-going vessels transact with shipbuilders both domestically and internationally without distinction, we defined the relevant geographic market as global on a cross-border basis. On that basis, we conducted our assessment in light of the actual competitive conditions in the global market and concluded that the merger did not raise concerns. In this way, we address emerging challenges through flexible case-by-case application of the existing merger review framework.
Thank you, Chair Chitani. Executive Director Naga, could you provide the viewpoint of the impact of all the changing economic and political environments on smaller economies like Mauritius?
Thank you, Jane, for this pertinent question and the opportunity for me to set out how the changing economic and geopolitical context is affecting small economies like Mauritius. Before I do, I'd just like to congratulate the PCC for organizing such a beautiful event. And after yesterday's party, we can safely say you guys can throw a nice party. Coming back to your question, Jane, global economic and political disruptions may have a disproportionate impact on small economies, such as Mauritius, which tends to have high exposure to such international risks. To understand how the changing economic and geopolitical landscape affects small economies, it is important to understand how small economies differ from larger economies in such context. Small economies like Mauritius tend to have smaller sized markets, which makes them less self-reliant. We tend to rely heavily on imports, increasing our exposure risks. the more so that we rely on imports for essential goods like food, pharmaceuticals, and energy. So disturbances in imports not only affect consumers, but also companies which also rely on imports for their inputs. So being small also means that we have less leverage and market power vis-à-vis our trade partners in global economy. A small market is usually one that can be sacrificed by multinational companies in times of shortages of supply. Mauritius is not only a small economy, but also a small island in the Indian Ocean, which relies on tourism to an appreciable extent. And this further exposes us to environmental risks. So the delicate nature of supply systems has been underscored by the recent global events, including the pandemic, the inflationary pressures, and geopolitical conflicts. In Mauritius, businesses and consumers are subjected to escalating prices as a result of shipping delays, rising freight costs, exchange rate depreciation, and increased input costs. In such an environment, we believe that merger control cannot be regarded solely through the conventional lenses of concentration and market share. Authorities must also consider the broader issues of long-term sustainability, food security, continuity of supply, and resilience. We believe that competition policy must continue to be resilient. However, it must also be pragmatic.
Thank you very much. And I would say, from another small economy, some of the factors that you've identified are just as relevant in Canada. Maybe not the island part, but the rest of it seems very relevant. We're going to move on to a second kind of theme, which I'll describe as our notifications. Are we part of the problem or part of the solution? So when we think about the role of merger control and the power that agencies hold, there can be an inherent trade-off between detecting potentially problematic transactions and creating unnecessary hurdles for emerging parties. Peter, with respect to notification thresholds, how do you see that trade-off under the new Australian regime, and how can agencies be most effective?
Thanks, Jean, and thanks also to the PCC and the ACCC for nominating me to participate in what has been an amazing event. So obviously, as we know, in designing a merger control regime, there is going to be a trade-off between certainty in the form of objective, simple, clear and quantifiable mandatory notification thresholds that can be easily understood and applied by business, and then also flexibility, where there is the exercise of judgment and regulatory discretion in order to keep mergers that are unlikely to have an impact on competition out of the merger control regime. And what this means is that where you have high degrees of certainty, it can be hard to design thresholds that don't overcapture, and that is what Australia has been facing into, addressing how that trade-off will apply to our economy as we've moved from a voluntary and non-statutory merger process underpinned by enforcement powers through to a mandatory notification regime. And during the design phase, various options were considered, and for the most part, the Australian government has lent heavily into providing greater certainty for merger parties rather than flexibility. And that has meant that when designing the notification thresholds for the new regime, the government considered and rejected a number of mechanisms. So it rejected notification thresholds based on market share, and also giving a call-in power to the regulator on the basis that both of those aspects would increase uncertainty. So as a result, the Australian government has implemented notification thresholds based on revenue and transaction values, but it has also, having regard to the particularities of our economy, introduced specific thresholds that are directed towards creeping acquisitions or serial acquisitions, and also ensured that there are, for some industries, specific targets. And at the moment, that relates to supermarkets, but the government has foreshadowed that that could also extend to fuel quite presciently, as it now turns out. It also ensures under the new regime that the ACCC has the ability to sue companies for anti-competitive mergers where they have not met those notification thresholds. So we're at very early stages now, 5 months in, and time will tell whether this mix of economy-wide thresholds plus the lower thresholds for serial acquisitions and the industry-specific thresholds are going to find the right balance for the economy between ensuring that potentially anti-competitive acquisitions are reviewed without creating unjustifiable delay and cost for transactions that are unlikely to lessen competition. At the moment, we are seeing that the certainty goal is having some unintended consequences in that the regulatory design is seeking to capture all types of transactions across both shares and assets and also structures, particular transaction structures. And that has led to some complexity so that even what are supposed to be objective criteria are proving difficult to apply in practice, but hopefully this will abate as the regime matures and market practice develops. Crucially though, the final piece of flexibility that has been built into the regime is the fact that the thresholds are going to be reviewed after 12 months of the regime being in effect, and that does not need to go back through the entire parliamentary process. That will be achieved by a minister, by the relevant minister issuing a legislative instrument, and there'll be consultation at that phase. And hopefully that will give the government the ability to adjust the thresholds as required to strike the right balance.
Thanks, Peter. And I think I can say, as an enforcement, you're always worried about what you don't see. Under the Canadian law, we had amendments that gave us a longer limitation period for non-notifiable transactions in the event that we couldn't detect in time versus the 1-year limitation period for transactions. But Benoit, President Correa, from an enforcement perspective, maybe you can add on to those difficult cases where we're worried about what we're not seeing and the role of our call-in powers in those situations.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jean, and let me first thank our colleagues from the PCC and Chairman Michael for their wonderful hospitality. We've been impressed by the Philippines generally and by the organization of the conference and by the PCC's warmth and friendliness. So thank you very much for that. Indeed, I would say that the case of call-in powers, or even more generally, how do we deal with smaller acquisitions? Not only killer acquisitions, because there can be different cases here, but let's say acquisitions of smaller companies which can be harmful to competition. I think it's a good test of how flexible we can be in enforcing our powers, and also sometimes it shows us the limits of our powers and the fact that we have to go back to Parliament to modernize our merger framework to be able to address these new challenges. And in Europe, that discussion has very much been framed by two very important decisions by the European Court of Justice. On the one hand, you have the Towercast decision that reminds us that an acquisition can be addressed through antitrust if it's an acquisition by a dominant company that substantially impedes competition, meaning that it leaves all companies in the market dependent on the behavior of the dominant firm, and that could be qualified as abuse of dominance under EU law. And then we have the Illumina Grail decision, another landmark decision by the European Court of Justice that says that member states can defer below threshold acquisitions only to the extent that they do have the competence under national law. And so that prompted a fresh view at call-in powers all throughout Europe for those jurisdictions, including France, which did not have call-in powers below notification thresholds. So you have these two routes in a way. The dominance route is certainly very narrow legally. So it is the, if I'm allowed to quote Robert Frost, it's a road less traveled, right? It's possible, but it's narrow. While call-in powers certainly have a much broader reach, but of course you need to change the law in a number of countries, including France. So we actually took a decision last year to sanction an acquisition as abuse of dominance. So applying this new, it's actually not new, but this reaffirmed view by the European Court of Justice that killer acquisitions can be seen as abuse of dominance. And so the company is Doctolib, so it's a digital platform arranging meetings between patients and doctors. It's an online, it's a two-sided market between doctors and individuals, patients. And back in 2018, they purchased their main competitor, which was number 2 in the market. And that acquisition was not notifiable under our notification thresholds. And so we found that this was an abuse of dominance because this had significantly impeded competition in the market, and we sanctioned the company. And in parallel, we are asking our government and parliament to create a call-in power, which would be not necessarily similar, but which would be kind of inspired by what we have in other European countries, for instance, in Italy, which works pretty well. The only thing here is that we are very fully aware, deeply aware of the balance to be found between effectiveness in terms of detecting and sometimes banning, vetoing below threshold acquisitions which would be detrimental to competition, and legal certainty. And I'm saying that here in the ICN, where we have decades of discussions on, merger notification frameworks. So we're not going to kind of to throw away everything that we have learned about the need for legal certainty in merger reviews. That would be bad for the business, and that would be bad for ourselves. So we really need to strike the right balance between the ability to go below the thresholds and identify transactions which are harmful to competition, and on the other hand, not undermining legal certainty for companies. And we have a new step in that discussion in Europe has been the merger guidelines, which Kenny already mentioned, which have a section on what they call the innovation shield, that is highlighting a number of conditions under which an acquisition of a smaller innovative company should not be seen as harmful to competition. And certainly if and when the French Parliament gives us this new call-in power, we'll have to draft guidelines and then submit them to public consultation in France. And we'll certainly draw inspiration also from the Innovation Shield to highlight a number of situations where there should not be any concern. And we're not going to stand in the way of consolidation in the innovation market because there will be no direct concern to competition. So that's an example of how we can strike the right balance between legal certainty and preserving competition.
That sounds, I'll just mention in Canada we do have residual jurisdiction, and the legal certainty point, I think, given our guidelines, in my experience, a lot of transactions that may be below the threshold but may be close to the line where they do want legal certainty, they come in voluntarily under the regime so that they can get the certainty they need to close. And I'll also mention we do have draft abuse of dominance guidelines in Canada that treat killer acquisitions similarly to, we don't have cases, but we have draft guidelines.
No, and it's, the fact is that the two are very closely linked because of course, back in 2018, if at the time we had this kind of framework to deal with below threshold acquisitions, then presumably the company would have called us and we would have had that discussion, and there would have been no need to sanction them under abuse of dominance. So having an efficient and sound call-in power, it's also a way to lessen the need for investigation under abuse of dominance.
And I think another thing I would just highlight is investment in proactive intelligence to detect potentially creeping acquisitions that maybe behold. That's an area of investment for our agency. Connie, speaking of detecting killer acquisitions, can you speak to Spain's experience with market share thresholds during merger review?
Thank you very much. And yeah, we, on top of the turnover threshold that is common to many jurisdictions, Spain has a market share threshold that triggers notification when the company is going to increase or acquire, which means acquire, means that even with no overlapping, a market share of 30% or over it. If the target has a turnover of less than 10 million euro, then the market share threshold increases to 50%. But in all those cases, when you are either acquiring or increasing a market share of 30%, notification is mandatory, and our system is a compulsory notification one. So this means that we've been capturing everything that is not having even turnover, for example, because of clicks in particular, how many clicks you are having, how many devices you are, for example, distributing. So this market share is very flexible. It allows us to capture things that are not having any turnover whatsoever, which has proven extremely useful in digital markets, for example, among other markets. Of course, you are now thinking, okay, how do I define market shares? How do I have legal certainty on that? Well, first, we have a long-standing, already many cases and precedents that you can consult on on how we define markets, so you can define them as well. We have also informal channels of communication with the agency. We have also a formal channel of communication where you can notify preventively in order to ascertain whether you are or not having this market share threshold, and you can pre-notify if you want, and if it is a no-go, then no problem. But I would say that in Europe, companies have already a know-how on defining markets because many of our exemption regulations are based on market shares. The minimis, whether you have below 15% or 5%, so it is nothing new, and I would say that it's not impairing legal certainty on that. And on the other hand, this has allowed us to be, I would say, very efficient in detecting those kind of transactions that could have been otherwise killing acquisitions. To give you some ideas, approximately 75% of the digital mergers notified to the CNMC have met this threshold. 90% of the mergers cleared subject to remedies between 2008 and 2024 met these thresholds, which confirms that market shares can be used as an indirect indicator of the relevance of a transaction for competition. Because, I mean, this 90% clear subject to either remedies, well, remedies. We can either accept commitments or impose conditions. Spain has this capability. That's why there are so very few prohibitions in Spain, although we have adopted one this year. So this has also allowed us to refer cases to the European Commission, for example, Facebook, WhatsApp, Apple, Shazam, Viasat, Inmarsat, or lately Siemens Logistics, Van der Lande, for example, because we are able to capture transactions, and in particular this Siemens Logistics Van der Lande, it was already, it's a gun jumping case. It's a case that was closed with no notification, and it met the thresholds in Spain, so we do that as well. We have a track record of gun jumping cases that we are actively, detecting and publicizing in order to send a clear message to companies. So I would say that in that respect, we have a track record of avoiding, I would say, killer acquisitions. We are not aware of any transaction that we have not been capturing with our market share thresholds, either before notification or even after. Yeah, I would say that.
That's fantastic. It sounds like you have some flexible tools to give you a bit more certainty than the things that keep me up at night, wondering what we're not seeing, and investing in some detection mechanisms. We're going to shift a little bit to another key theme that seems to be emerging in the merger landscape, which is the role of environmental considerations in merger review. Chairman Chatani, how does the JFTC approach environmental protection and sustainability in merger review?
Thank you. We address environmental protection and sustainability considerations within the existing competition policy framework. As climate change is a global challenge, we established our green guidelines in March 2023 to support businesses in advancing a green transition. We revised the guidelines in April 2024 based on consultations and dialogue with stakeholders to further clarify our approach under the Anti-Monopoly Act. To our knowledge, this was one of the first guidelines of its kind in the world. Under the guidelines, innovations such as the development of new technologies that contribute to reducing greenhouse gas emissions may, in certain cases, be recognized as an efficiency gain. At the same time, environmental benefits do not automatically justify efficiencies. Efficiencies are recognized only where three conditions are met. First, that the efficiencies are measure specific. Second, that they are likely to be realized. And third, that they enhance consumer welfare. A concrete example is the merger between Kubota and Nippon Chutetsukan. In this case, the parties argued that the merger would enable the introduction of electric furnaces, significantly reducing CO2 emissions compared with conventional cupola furnaces. We assessed this claim in line with the green guidelines and taking into account the efficiency gains, concluded that the merger would not raise concerns, subject to appropriate remedies. In this way, we address environmental protection and sustainability challenges through the green guidelines, as well as through dialogue with businesses and our handling of concrete cases. Looking ahead, we will continue to update the guidelines and share relevant cases as appropriate in response to changes in markets and business practices, drawing on enforcement experience and consultation cases while engaging with our international counterparts.
Thank you very much. Benoit, what about in France?
Well, yeah, I think it's very similar in France to what we've heard about Japan. We believe that embedding environmental considerations in our merger control framework and practice should be a priority. It is very important, and we're only at the start of this journey. It's not only because sustainability is an overarching goal in the European treaties and under French law. It's also because competition can very practically contribute to these goals by delivering more innovation, by making the allocation of resources more efficient, and also by empowering consumers to choose more environmentally efficient solutions. So here we have a role to play, and also we believe that in many cases the environmental protection can be a parameter for competition, which we have to take into account under our competition framework anyway. So how does this translate into our merger framework? In three ways, I would say. First, we already have a number of cases where we have taken environmental considerations in consideration when defining markets. So we have decisions where we've defined markets for organic products, for instance, both in merger review and also in antitrust. We have a recent decision on brand repartition between specialized organic outlets and general groceries, where the market definition for organic products is important. And so we want also to reach consistency between our merger review practice and our antitrust practice here. We have another decision, just to give examples, where we considered that a specific segment of green electricity supply could be considered in a merger review. And yet another decision where we found that the transport of refined petroleum products via pipelines and by trucks were not substitutable. given the high environmental footprint of transport by trucks. So these are only examples. So it kind of slowly, permeates our merger practice through market definitions. Second, as I said, the environmental quality of products can be a parameter of competition. And third, and we've already heard about efficiencies, and we'll hear again about efficiencies later, but we do believe that when we look at the efficiencies generated by a merger or at the theory of benefits, if I use the new mantra of the DG Comp, environmental protection could be part of these efficiencies and of this theory of benefit. So it's really a discussion that is starting now, but we believe that there is a lot more we can do to make it happen in a practical way.
That's probably a really good jumping off point. Vipin, flexibility is one of those key aspects, but it also has to reflect market realities. Do you consider the merger control framework in Mauritius to be flexible enough to address a lot of these recent challenges?
Thank you, Jane. When we see digitalization, online trade, sustainability, crisis in energy supply, disturbances in the logistical chain, just to mention a few, these have direct repercussions on markets, and we think we cannot turn a blind eye on these issues. Ultimately, we're here for the well-being of the people and the economy. Fortunately, the Mauritian merger control framework does offer a certain degree of adaptability in addressing these realities. The Competition Act in Mauritius allows the Commission to take into consideration public benefit considerations in reviewing mergers. A merger which is otherwise anti-competitive may be allowed or allowed subject to conditions if it is outweighed by public benefits which are likely to be shared by consumers and businesses. These include promotion of technological or economic progress, improvements in production or distribution, and improved efficiency. The scope of intervention of the Commission is broad in terms of types of mergers it can intervene on, and also in terms of remedies it can impose. In relation to remedies, for instance, the law allows us to remedy the SLC and also the adverse effects that may result from the SLC. Those adverse effects have not been qualified in the law and we believe are quite broad. It is yet to be tested, but it may capture, for instance, detrimental effects on environment that may arise from the SLC. It is usually a challenge to assess the non-competition dimension of mergers, but nonetheless, those provisions give us certain flexibility in the assessment. Let me give you two examples. Firstly, in a recent case in the packaging manufacturing sector, the argument that the merger will favor environmental sustainability and may reduce reliance on imports was raised. It is argued that given the small size of the Mauritian market and in view of the minimum efficient scale, the merger was justified and will allow the maintenance of investment and in a recycling plant. These are arguments which the law allows us to take into account, and we do take them into account in our assessment. In another case, in implementing a divestment remedy in a merger within the market for the supply of petroleum products, the merging parties proposed a local company as a purchaser of the divestment business. One argument which was put forward for approval of the purchaser was the fact that it was a local entity. Previously, all the players were majority owned by foreign companies. That argument was taken into account in favor of approval in view of the benefits, of the economic benefits beyond market competition. and may emanate from such divestment, including self-reliance and economic dependency. It is, however, imperative to exercise flexibility with caution. Public interest consideration should not be used as a general justification for reduced competition. The difficulty is in preserving a principled equilibrium, which involves safeguarding competitive markets while permitting strategic consolidation in cases where it genuinely enhances economic resilience. Our experience indicates that the legal framework is capable of maintaining this equilibrium, but I would say there's always room for improvement. Thank you.
Thank you, Vipin. And Peter, picking up on the public benefit points beyond sort of substantial lessening of competition test and looking at efficiencies there, how does that play out in Australia?
So in Australia, the ACCC has had the ability to clear mergers where there are public benefits that outweigh public detriments, including lessening of competition, which does give the Commission flexibility to take account of benefits and detriments that are separately distinguished and balance those against competition. And it's different from the theory of benefit framework in the draft guidelines that President Fernandez outlined earlier, because the net benefits in Australia is a separate standalone pathway to clearance that assesses a broad range of public benefits. Importantly, though, under the net public benefits test, while the nature of the benefits have been broadly defined and can include anything that's of value to the community generally, including efficiency, sustainability, and the ongoing supply of essential services, there does need to be a clear causal connection between the proposed benefits and the merger in question, consistent with the approach that has been outlined in France as well. The benefits cannot just be coincident with the merger. But once there is a public benefit that has been established, the Commission then has to assess whether that benefit does outweigh any detriment, and the detriment usually does include impacts on competition. But typically the regulator and then the competition tribunal and the courts have adopted a process of instinctive synthesis. So there's not a precise quantification that takes place, but it is a process that enables a comparison of the claim benefits against the detriments. And in the past 5 years, there have been two interesting cases where mergers have been approved on the basis of a net public benefits case. The first is in the environmental space, where Brookfield acquired Origin, and the Commission was satisfied there that the acquisition would lead to a faster and more efficient transition to renewable energy, and that outweighed the potential impacts on competition from a cross-ownership arrangement that would arise where Brookfield would own through a number of funds across energy generation and transmission. And the second case was the approval of a merger between two companies that provided logistical services in the cash distribution market. It was akin to a failing firm defence, but the Commission was satisfied that the public benefits from avoiding the disruption were important and outweighed any detriment, which really lent into the type of economic resilience arguments that we've been hearing about today. Under the new merger process, parties can request that the ACCC assess net public benefits, but it has to follow on from an assessment by the ACCC that there has been a substantial lessening of competition. It's what's been called phase 3 of the new merger clearance process. And will change the way that arguments are being put forward by merger parties. So we see that while the net public benefits test being separate to the competition assessment does give the Commission greater scope to consider a very broad range of possible impacts of a transaction to justify clearance, the practical procedure may mean that because of the additional time that will be taken for that review, parties do need to be laser focused about their substantial lessening arguments up front.
Well, we've talked a little bit about how we look at efficiencies when we're looking at a transaction. Benoit, what about efficiencies within our process? How can we be more efficient as enforcement agencies?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, because we until recently, when it comes to efficiencies in mergers, we've been faced with a kind of a dilemma or a conundrum, which is that it's possible in law. I mean, the possibility to account for efficiency is provided by EU law and also by French law, as far as we are concerned, and it's hardly ever been used. Right, so we've been stuck in the middle of nowhere when it comes to efficiency assessments, and the question is why, and what can we do about that? And as always, it takes two to tango, right? So on the authorities' side, there has been a reluctance to consider efficiencies. One reason being that the legal standard is pretty high. As we know, efficiencies have to be merger specific. They have to be verifiable and preferably quantifiable, even though the new merger guidelines open a door to have efficiencies which will not be quantifiable, but still they have to be verifiable. And the benefits have to be given back to consumers. So that's three strong conditions, and that's not going to change because it makes sense. So we're not going to change that. And then on the company side and on the side of their councils, there has been also a reluctance to come to us and with an efficiency defense, but also maybe because they knew that we would not consider it. So it's a kind of, it's a kind of a trap here. So how do we get out of this trap? I think we, first, I mean, without changing the standard of proof, because it's not going to change, we must send a very clear and positive message to companies that their efficiency defenses will be taken seriously, and that's what the draft merger guidelines do. I really see the merger guidelines here as bringing the efficiency defense back from being a curiosity in law courses to the mainstream of merger reviews. And that's a very powerful signal to European companies. Second, we also have to be clear that it's not going to be an open bar. So the legal standard is not going to change. We need these three conditions, and companies have to be prepared to submit very robust analysis of efficiencies, because the burden is on them to submit the numbers and the theory of benefits, both in quantitative and in qualitative terms. And third, that's for us, we have to be ready to engage in that discussion and to take their request, and that's the merger guidelines will encourage us to do. And kind of looping back to the discussion on the environment, there will be an important and difficult question will be how do we take environmental efficiencies on board in a merger review, because that here we add to the complexity, because there is an inherent dimension of an externality here. So we have to be clear about which kind of out-of-market externalities will be considered and which will not be considered. I think the draft guidelines are pretty clear on that any out-of-market externality has to benefit the same consumers. It cannot, it can be very good for consumers which are 10,000 miles away, but that's not our job to consider that. That may be controversial, but at least it sets a clear framework and clear limits to which kind of environmental externalities can be taken on board. But of course, at the end, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. No? So it will all depend on the cases we see. And so really here, my message to European companies and to their councils is, please come to us with an efficiency defense. It's not always going to work. And in many cases, we will not be satisfied. I will tell you that it's not robust enough, but we need to start the discussion, and it's urgent.
Yeah, I could probably speak for an hour with our experience under the old Canadian framework, where we had a trade-off for efficiencies. So it really made it difficult to evaluate efficiencies within a review, because you had to establish the SLC, quantify the SLC, and then do the trade-off analysis using the proof from the parties, the evidence from the parties. So we have moved to a similar, trying to evaluate efficiencies, pro-competitive efficiencies within the SLC test, and I look forward to seeing what our experience is going forward. Connie, as we discuss kind of the evolution of merger control, do you think agencies can better consider efficiencies and innovation in their reviews?
Okay, well, regarding innovation, I have to say that in the CNMC, so we always assess innovation where it's a relevant factor, but I have to say that so far it has never been a decisive theory of harm or benefit in any of our cases. But we do analyze it and examine it when it's relevant. The relative innovation efforts of the parties, the expected impact of the transaction on the aggregate innovation efforts in the market, and we have several examples like Norton Avast or Wedding Planner Thank You Ventures, Carnot Tier. But let me focus a little bit, because I don't have that much time, on investment, because I think that is probably more interesting in our practice. So we've already analyzed the impact of mergers, not just on immediate market conditions, but also in investment-related efficiencies. And in particular, now the draft guidelines offer insight into how to evaluate investment or investment-driven efficiencies. And this is very welcome, because I have to say that it is a difficult exercise. However, it still remains to be seen when and how commitments are needed to make innovation and investment claims cognizable, without making commitments the default. And I am aware that what is currently under review is the EU merger guidelines, not the EU remedies notice. But changing to a more dynamic approach requires having a sound monitoring system, and this is our experience, that competition authorities should consider the opportunity of creating monitoring units to verify fulfillment and assessment, impact assessment also, in terms of competitiveness and growth of the investment efficiencies or commitments, may it be, that they are having. And I can give you an example of one of our cases. Quirón Clínica Santa Cristina is a 2019 case in which the merger, which was broader than a province, but gave rise to a monopoly in one specific province. But it was clear, subject to commitments, including an investment commitment. And the investment commitment was needed in order to provide this monopoly situation with new specialties of the hospitals that were merging. By creating this monopoly in that specific province, they were able to increase the portfolio of specialties, and the commitment was also not to close any of the ones. The new specialties were cardiology, nuclear medicine, and neurology, and they committed not to close the existing one, pediatrics, and well, many of the ones. So we've been monitoring the investment that was committed, and in fact, we are able to say that they have invested even more what they were committing. So that worked, but it was in our monitoring that we were able to check on that. Some other cases that have been, pigments, negocio ferro, where it was investment in research and development, and we've been monitoring it in order to verify that this is being really abide by. So that's something that I would recommend reflection on, whether if you want to really be sure that commitments that are for the future are going to be really providing the benefits, maybe you need some monitoring. Yeah.
That's great. We are running low on time, and I want to make sure that you're all awake out there. So we're going to move to our quick hitter questions. So on the screen, there should be, hopefully, a QR code will come up. We'll be polling the audience as we ask a question to each of our panelists. My first question is to Chair Chitani. Do you see the importance of international cooperation and merger control increasing or decreasing? Oh, wait. We have the wrong question. So, one second.
Thank you. Over the next 5 years, we believe that the importance of international cooperation in merger control will continue to grow. As business activities and markets become increasingly globalized and this digitalization further accelerates, the number of mergers spanning multiple jurisdictions is rising, making cooperation among competition authorities indispensable. In particular, mergers in the digital sector often involve firms operating on a global scale and therefore require responses from an international perspective. Moreover, in areas such as digital markets and environmental sustainability, the practice of authorities that are taking the lead can serve as important precedents and points of reference for others. In the digital field, where specialized expertise is limited across jurisdictions, the sharing of such experience and knowledge is highly valuable in enabling effective merger review. From this perspective, multilateral frameworks such as the ICN and the OECD play an essential role in international cooperation in merger control by facilitating the sharing of experience among authorities. At the same time, for the handling of individual cases, bilateral cooperation, including working level communication, is equally indispensable. The GFTC will continue to strengthen its close cooperation with its international counterparts going forward.
Well, thank you. For a while there, I thought we had unanimity in the ICN community that we see the role of international cooperation increasing. I see there is some dissent that's coming forward. There's 12%. Oh, they're changing their mind. 8% see the role of international cooperation decreasing, with the vast majority seeing it increase, which I think cooperation doesn't always mean convergence, and sometimes the most important thing is to continue to have discussions so that we can understand why we may be diverging. My second question is to you, Peter. Is under-enforcement or over-enforcement the bigger risk right now?
I think I might be in a bit of a unique position from Australia in speaking to this, because at the moment the concern is actually one of overcapture with the new regime, which has been expressly designed to require more acquisitions to be notified in Australia and to give the Commission stronger legal rights to block mergers. And that in the risks that obviously follow from that include the burden and potential delay for transactions that need to be notified to the ACCC, although there are very tight timeframes that the ACCC has to work to and is meeting. But then also the risk that acquisitions that do have overlap but don't lessen competition will still need to go through the review process as well. It is a really critical time for our regulator. It's a time of cultural and practical change, and we are confident that the ACCC will continue to maintain its rigorous evidential standards, but also its pragmatic decision-making processes, both in terms of its substantive decision-making, but also in ensuring that the process works smoothly and doesn't focus on form over process, so that there is continuing confidence in the regime.
Well, it looks like there are more enforcers in the room than NGAs by a fairly wide margin, but I won't make that assumption. Perhaps some of the NGAs would like to have under-enforcement. It's business development, after all. So our next question is to you, Vipin. Have events in the past 10 years made merger control more adaptive or more cautious?
I would say both. On one hand, merger transactions have become more complex, involving global players. Markets also becoming more complex with digitalization. These transactions must be assessed in a more cautious manner. On the other hand, the competition authorities are being called to take a broader approach to assessments of mergers, factoring issues like sustainability, employment, and the turbulent economic context. The need to protect local economy faced with international exposure is also evoked. This has been accentuated with the COVID crisis and more recent geopolitical issues. Therefore, I believe that competition authorities are more cautious while also being open and adaptive to new realities in the market.
Well, it looks like most people do think we can adapt. So that's a positive, optimistic note, I think, for all of us, given the current world we are living in right now. May we live in interesting times. Connie, the next question is to you. Do you think agencies are equipped in this dynamic world to monitor remedies and ensure outcomes remain effective?
Well, as I was saying, monitoring is something that we should consider more closely, because it's not only for those dynamic efficiencies, but also, for example, if you are thinking of behavioral remedies, that's something that in digital markets, for example, may work better. You are going to be more confident in the results that those behavioral remedies may be providing if you are able to monitor it. I know that for competition authorities it may be a burden, but at the same time we learn a lot on how remedies have to be designed, which is also helpful for new merger remedies in the future.
Well, that's great. It does seem like we don't feel particularly confident on this question.
It seems that not many people have monitoring units.
That's exactly it.
Yes.
Maybe this is an area for further investment for all of us to be talking to our policymakers about. And the last question is for you, Benoit. Is the direction of travel for merger control becoming more flexible or more rigid?
Well, it obviously relates to some of the previous questions, like the question on adaptability, which you asked Vipin. I mean, it's adaptation and flexibility are related, obviously. Look, I would say that we've always been flexible. We'll continue to be so. It's just that the economy around us is changing. Right? Business models are changing. The reasons why firms are merging are changing. The sources of market power are changing, particularly in the digital world, so we've got to adapt to that anyway. So we'll keep being flexible. I think our discussion today has shown that we can be flexible substance-wise. And the discussion on the theory of benefits, for instance, shows really that we can really change the way we're looking at things. We can be flexible process-wise, and the discussion we've just had on call-in powers also shows that we can change the way we implement merger reviews. Also, the discussion on efficiencies, it's very much related to process, right? When do we ask for the efficiency defense? At which stage in the process? Based on which numbers, and so on. And that will continue to be at the center of our discussions. I would just conclude with two notes of caution here. Flexibility is good, but flexibility should not come at the expense of legal previsibility or certainty for companies. And here there is an obvious tension, and we have to be careful about it. And second, flexibility should not come at the expense of competition authorities having a clear mandate and remaining independent. Because the more we do, the more we try to embrace, the bigger the risk to lose our independence, because we'll be seen by everyone else as politicians. And we don't want to go there.
So we have to be flexible, but still evidence-based and true to our framework and independence. Well, it looks like there is consensus that more do believe that we are becoming more flexible and less rigid. So thank you all for participating. Thank you to the audience for your participation in the questions. And thanks, of course, to all our panelists for their time and very thoughtful responses. It's really helpful to have the insight of experts from around the world at this particularly challenging time as we adapt. So thank you very much. And that concludes our session.
Thank you very much to our moderator and distinguished panelists, our speakers, for such a rich and thought-provoking discussion. May I invite everyone to please stay center stage so that we can have a photo op. Capture this moment. Second to the last plenary for today. On the last day of the International Competition Network Annual Conference 2026. Can we give them all a round of applause, please? Thank you very much. We still have one more plenary that is right around the corner. And then we do have lunch and then that cultural tour. I hope everyone is ready for that as well. Let me make my way up on stage. Okay, here we go. We now move forward to our next plenary session, which brings together many of the themes that we have been discussing throughout the conference. This time with a strong focus on how these ideas translate into practice. We proceed to the implementation plenary, which will explore how competition policy is being put into action in today's evolving global environment. In this session, we shift our attention from frameworks and design to real-world execution, how agencies are implementing enforcement, building capacity, and ensuring that policies deliver meaningful impact on markets and consumers. Leading the discussion is our moderator, Mr. Nigel Caesar of the Competition Bureau, Canada. A warm welcome for him, please. He is joined by our distinguished speakers, Ms. Daniela Bove of the Competition Commission, South Africa, Mr. Rowan Abdallah of the Egyptian Competition Authority. Let's all give him a round of applause as well as he makes his way to the stage. And our ICN special guest, Mr. William Kovacic. Now that we have everyone on stage, Mr. Nigel, the stage is all yours, and I believe there is somebody you wish to introduce. Okay, at the end, something to look forward to. The stage is all yours, sir.
Mabuhay. So I'd like to introduce everybody again. Rowan Abdallah, Head of Economic Technical Assistance Unit at the Egyptian Competition Authority. Danielle Bove, Principal Analyst at the Advocacy Division at the Competition Commission of South Africa. And I won't need to introduce Bill Kovacic. So with that, I just wanted to say and express what a cultural dinner last night. Truly showed the Pinoy culture and hospitality. So thanks again to Chair Mike, Edie Ken, Ina, and all the staff at the PCC for truly an amazing conference. So tidbit, for next year, there'll be a mango competition from all authorities to bear such fruit. So make sure to remember that for the next location of the ICN annual conference, which is the worst kept secret at this network. So welcome to the final session of the 2026 ICN annual conference. Even though the Canadians appear to have a monopoly on the moderating roles in the plenary session this morning. So I was going to talk about the implementation plenary session, but I believe the host there, she pretty much said it in a succinct manner. So for lack of time, I'll just go right to it. So in keeping with the theme of celebrating the network's 25th anniversary conference, I would like to share the mastermind and the original G, so the OG, Randy Tritel, who apologizes for not being here. So some words from Randy is that, he viewed this session as one of the most important of the conference. Of course, it's important for the ICN to develop its wide range of terrific content, but its value is ultimately its use by the members. One could preferably say the proof of the pudding is in the eating. The plenary session is designed to showcase how a diverse spectrum of agencies use ICN work product to be a more effective agency and to further international convergence towards best practices. He wanted to ensure and encourage all members to think about how they can use the specific instruments that the panelists are highlighting and to prompt them to think about the utility of the whole range of ICN output. It was also an opportunity to give newer and smaller agencies time in the limelight, which we hope would also be inspiring to other newer and smaller agencies. Then the inspiration behind incorporating proverbs in the local language. This was pretty random, according to Randy. He said he was preparing the remarks at the first annual conference on the proposed recommended practices for merger notification and review. And to his best recollection, he had drafted a straightforward description of what the working group set out to do, the process during the year, and the resulting recommendations. In reading through the draft presentation, he found it adequate, but probably a bit boring. So especially in the context of many such presentations that would be given during the conference. So he thought of looking for a historical or local angle, and then thought about a story analog, but that would be too long. So next he thought about sayings or proverbs. And then why not spice it up and try to do it in the local language? And he said he received a welcome and good reaction. So he went, this is very much an American thing because I didn't understand it. So he said he went whole hog for the second annual conference and bought a couple of books of Mexican proverbs, how far we've come, we've come, Randy, with respect to not using AI. And he bought a couple of books, and he said he incorporated quite a few, and again, got a good reaction. Many laughs from the locals, which could be either because they thought the proverbs were clever, or because his pronunciation was so awful. Either was fine with him. So hopefully Nina's around. So with the tradition of the locals laughing at me, I've invited Nina, one of the PCC colleagues, to actually pronounce the Tagalog words correctly, as I do the absolute opposite. So, ang mabigat ay gumagan kung pinagtutulungan.
Hello, hello. Sorry, Nigel, it's just not how it's said, but let me try. So, what he meant to say is, ang mabigat ay gumagaan kapag tagtutulungan.
I beg to differ. I think I was pretty close.
I'd like to know what it actually meant.
Yes, this is what I'm about to do. So a heavy burden is lightened if everyone participates in carrying it. This implies that fun and shared experiences can lighten the load and bring joy. Although I would say all the heavy burden is with Nina today. So with that, let's turn to the questions. And the first one I'm going to turn to Bill. How did the ICN evolve from its original 2002 Naples mandate, which did not prioritize agency effectiveness or policy implementation, so to a point where the AWG, so the Agency Effectiveness Working Group, now serves as one of the pillars of the conference programming?
Nigel, thank you for including us in this wonderful wrap-up session, and great thanks to Chairman Mike and his incomparable team for 3 perfect days in Manila. When the ICN took the stage at Fordham in the fall of 2001, and then took the stage at the Castle in Naples in 2002, the implementation issues that we're talking about today were not even secondary concerns. The overriding focus was on substantive standards. But what takes place almost immediately is a recognition that if you can't find a way to close the dangerous terrain between the policy aspiration and its realization in practice, you have a glorious failure. And I think agency after agency posed the vexing question, how do you actually do it? And what we saw in work was a model of adaptation where the leadership of the ICN and the implementing staff took it upon themselves to respond to this concern and to build a framework to do this. And here again, we had this indispensable catalyst of policy entrepreneurs. There are people like Randy Treitel, people like Paul O'Brien, people like Russ Damtoft, who was the leading voice behind the training on demand. People like yourself, Nigel. Those of you who've been around for a while recognize, again, the incomparable role that Canada played in the development of the Secretariat and in propelling this set of issues forward. You're too modest to mention it on your own. I'm not too shy about pointing it out.
Moving right along.
We had a staff And we had a secretariat and we had leadership that said this is crucial to what the agency does. And what comes out of it is an admirable process of adaptation. This was not on the original agenda, yet it becomes part of the very lifeblood of what the institution has done. My strong claim is that it is the most important and most successful ingredient of what the ICN has done over time by providing that kind of guidance. And in doing so, it's become a model for the type of cooperation that we speak about in theory, but we live in practice. It's the cooperation that took place across country after country to put together the magnificent materials that AEWG has assembled over time and to provide the foundation for answering the difficult question, how do you actually do it in practice? In that respect, I think it's a wonderful success story in the evolution of this program.
Perfect, thanks, Bill. So we'll turn to Daniela now. And how has your agency used ICN work products to advocate for legislative or policy change within your jurisdiction?
Thank you, Nigel. Firstly, I'd like to extend a thank you for giving us the opportunity as the Competition Commission South Africa to share our experiences, and also to the hosts, the Philippine Competition Commission, for hosting a conference with impact. So to your question, Nigel, the Competition Commission South Africa has used the ICN recommended practices on competition assessment to integrate competition principles into policy. We have a dedicated advocacy division within the Competition Commission South Africa that has a mandate under our Competition Act to review new and existing public regulation and laws to ensure that they have a bearing on competition in markets and to make sure that they do not result in anti-competitive outcomes. So we aim to ensure that new and existing laws and regulations promote compliance with competition law and assist to level the playing field, especially for the expansion of small, medium enterprises and historically disadvantaged persons. And this includes the women, youth, and people with disabilities. This is part of the South African government and the Competition Commission's strategic objectives. And so the toolkit of the ICN recommended practices aids our competitive assessment. When selecting policies for the competitive assessment, we pay particular attention to some of the factors in the toolkit. This includes whether the policy limits the number of market participants, and here we will inquire if the policy serves to strengthen the market power of incumbents and whether it achieves real benefits for SMEs and HDPs. We also consider if the policy enables increased choice and a greater information made available to consumers, since restrictions can have an impact on competition. Some other factors that we consider are the policy goals and objectives of the policy, assessing the competitive restraints, and identifying less restrictive alternatives that may achieve the policy outcomes. An example to highlight the ways that we have used the toolkit is in the gas sector. We have achieved a coordinated mechanism with regulators in the gas sector, which includes the National Energy Regulator, the Ports Authority, and the Ports Regulator, to discuss phasing out long-term exclusivity agreements, which can result in discouraging terminal access by third parties to gas infrastructure, and they tend to lock in single users for extended periods. Through this mechanism, we have promoted enabling third-party access obligations to that infrastructure. And finally, we are currently working with these regulators on a guideline to ensure a unified position that aims to set out the anti-exclusivity expectations and also the mechanisms for compliance. And this can give market players transparency on the compliance expectations and also the options available to them in terms of their legal recourse. Thank you, Nigel.
Thanks, Daniela. So on to my assistant, Nina. Walang palayok na walang kasakata na takalop.
Okay, okay. I'll say it. What he actually meant to say is, walang palayok na walang kasukat na takob.
Exactly.
That's not what he said.
Every pot has a matching lid. And in the competition context, it means every anti-competitive practice has an appropriate remedy, whether behavioral commitments, structural divestitures, or prohibition. So turning to question 3, Rowan, could you share insights on the different type of manuals, guides, workbooks, and the ICN training on demand, which Professor Kovacic talked about with respect to Russell Davenport's work?
Okay, so in terms of the guides, our case handlers, we mostly use them in our everyday because they cover like the main angles of competition, ranging from enforcement in detail, unilateral conduct, cartels, mergers, and even extends to go over advocacy and market studies, and even the on-demand trainings. So there is a lot that goes on in the work catalog that can help any case handler beginning like the journey in competition law. But for the sake of the question, we will try to apply on just an angle of that, which is the M&As. So the first time, or when we get to learn about M&As, mainly the reason or rationale that it goes on, it's mainly to increase the presence of the companies, increase market shares, accelerate growth, and so on. So there is nothing really noble going on, but to how we can make this profitable. And this is like the business perspective. But when you get to look at it from the other side, which is the competition authorities, it's a lot more different. It's not whether that transaction was profitable or not on the market, but how to numerically grasp the impact of the transaction on the market you're studying that hasn't even happened yet. So in this matter, there is a lot of wealth of material that tells you, to do the assessment, you have to 1 + 1, that gives you a 2. So if you have these, the assessment is simple. But in real life, it's different because when you get to it and you have your market praise and the market, you don't always have that kind of information available. So now you're stuck between what is theoretically correct and what really happens in real life. And so the guides, they help to narrow down the gap, and so they give you alternatives on how 4 divided by 2 is also 2. So you get the same result, but from another way. And so even to give a more detailed example on this is diversion ratios. No transaction on horizontal mergers that does not include diversion ratios in it. And so to calculate it, there is a lot of estimation of elasticities, and no economist doesn't know how to estimate them. But they are very rich in data, and especially the cross-price one. So it depends on the market and whether you have that data available or not. So if you don't have it, you're not going to do it. But the guides, they tell you, no, there is some other approach so that you can still have your assessment correct and sufficient. And for example, to use market shares as a proxy, because the way or after the transaction, the sales, they get divided into the proportion of the market shares of the market players. And so now you're left with doing the analysis that you wanted to conduct, but also not leaving out anything that is incorrect. And so this kind of formal documentation, it really helps competition authorities to not having to reinvent the wheel every time, because we don't know what we don't know unless someone points it out or tells us how to do it. And so it's been very, very, very beneficial to see how others do the analysis of, okay, theoretically you can do this, but in real life you have to compromise, but you can do that and end at the same result.
Perfect. Thanks, Rohan. And now we're going to turn back to you, Bill. How has the AWG's body of work been integrated into competition law teaching and training programs, and what examples demonstrate its practical impacts in the educational settings?
One of the hardest things in any education program is to build teaching materials that provide an informative foundation for learning about the subject matter. I'm going to point to a document that has been part of the ICN's work that is, in its own way, truly revolutionary, and that's the toolkit. The toolkit is an effort to pull together not just ICN work product, but a host of other contributions to the field, subject area by subject area, that can be the foundation for the establishment of bespoke teaching materials for any jurisdiction or for any single competition authority. The ICN had a path-breaking role in integrating video and forms of learning other than text into the instruction of the field. The Video on Demand program was an initial example of this. Shorter treatments, longer treatments, acting by competition agency authorities who showed incredible artistic skill in presenting different scenarios. But the ICN was out on the frontier in offering these kinds of video portrayals of subject matter as a way of teaching and integrating that into a larger program. What I'm seeing in universities around the world is the development of what might be called an open source formula for instructional materials, where you can take case materials that some authors have put directly into the public domain at no cost. You can take the ICN work product and integrate that and adapt it. And you can take a variety of other public domain materials that are included in this remarkable document, which is scalable and adaptable over time. And it has the potential of making informative teaching far more accessible than was possible before. And that even jurisdictions that are struggling to cope with the usual resource constraints can put together something that's really dazzling. And the other thing I'll mention is that the ICN is playing a revolutionary role in helping agencies think about how to do training themselves. And the other amazing document, Good Practices for Training and Competition Authorities. This is a draft from April. This is the best treatment on the subject I've ever seen. I can recall sitting in my dining room at home reading this and almost levitating from the table saying, this is the best damn thing that's ever been written about training. It is the antithesis of taking items off the shelf, off the rack, and saying, we're not going to measure you for this suit, just wear this one. From the days when you had development tourists go from jurisdiction to jurisdiction with the same stale collection of slides, give the talk, sometimes with the right name of the jurisdiction on the first slide, finish, go to the souvenir stand, and get out of town, knowing that they'd never be accountable in any sense for what they were doing. This is an entirely different approach that tells agencies how to think about doing this to get training that really makes a difference, as our training program yesterday discussed, making it stick over time. That's got ICN's name all over it from the word go.
Thanks, Bill. So we now turn back to you, Daniela. Has your agency changed its practices or rules to reflect ICN recommendations?
Yes, certainly, Nigel. At Competition Commission South Africa, we have recently finalized guidelines on a framework for pre-merger filing consultations, and this aligns with Section D of the ICN recommended practices for merger notification and review procedures. And that section recommends to competition authorities to facilitate merger review or pre-merger notification processes, which can create an open and frank discussion framework between the merging parties and the Commission. And so we have promoted that principle within our guidelines. We have included the principle around informal discussions on a confidential basis, and these are not binding on any party that participates. So should a merger assessment have to follow, it would not be implicated. And then another example I would like to highlight is around our public interest guidelines, which are applicable to our merger assessments. We have also made additions to those guidelines to embed sustainability and environmental considerations in our merger review assessments. And so on behalf of the Competition Commission, our message is that make the ICN work product work for you. It can be tailored to your strategic objectives, and guidelines can be a useful advocacy tool to implement them.
Well said, Daniela. So this one I'm fully going to butcher, so I'm giving full transparency here.
Run for cover.
Matibe Angwalis, Palibasai Makabikis.
We practiced this yesterday, Nigel. What he meant to say was, matibay ang walis, palibhasay magkabigkis.
That's what I said. So a broom is sturdy because its strands are tightly bound. So in the competition context, competition agencies strengthen their effectiveness through ICN cooperation and knowledge sharing networks. So we'll turn to Rohan again. How has the ECA's commitment to sharing their experiences in the network strengthened the ICN's culture of reciprocal learning and peer support?
So just as how ECA, we benefited from the ICN's work catalog and every material that is available, it's also, we know that is our duty and every agency's turn to give back to the network, because this is what makes the network sustainable, and this is how you ensure that you have this village of villagers in it. So it has been, we have been very grateful for every opportunity to be sharing the experiences that we learned from the field so that others can benefit from it and so back at us as well. So one of the projects that we have been recently working on under the advocacy working group, that is the design of the ICN survey that is concerned with limiting or addressing the worldwide trends in anti-competitive state measures. And so the idea was that we designed the survey that goes on how, what are the types of state measures, how each authority goes on to its assessment, what's the impact on the market, and then based on that authorities' experiences, we can have a comprehensive report that everyone can go for as a guide to see, okay, this authority has had a similar issue to mine, so that maybe I can contact them for that experience. And so the work progress is that the survey is done, it has been circulated, we've received the responses, and we're currently in the works of drafting that final report and should be shared soon with the network.
Thanks, Rohan. So, Don, I have another one to say. You went too quickly. So, ang palaya pairisa, habang nakakalaman ay lalong nagpupakay.
That was terrible. What Nigel meant to say is, ang palay ay parisan, habang nagkakalaman ay lalong nagpupugay.
Be like the rice stalk. The more grains it bears, the lower it bows. So in a competition context, as agencies gain expertise and enforcement experience, they should remain humble and open to peer learning. So the last question to you, Bill, is how can we leverage partnerships with universities and external bodies to strengthen implementation of AWG recommendations, and what specific enhancements will determine whether agencies succeed or fall short in their enforcement objectives?
Only a brave man with a strong sense of self-assurance could be doing what you did before, so you have our endless admiration.
It's not done yet.
I think there are tremendous areas for expansion. What's the philosophy that would guide you in deciding what to do? You're looking for niches that haven't been occupied or haven't been occupied well, where a careful application of talent and effort can give you something that's better than anything that's out there. And a number of those niches exist. To me, one of the most important in the collaboration with academia is to have a regular process where the competition authority sits down in a workshop with academics who present their work to the agency, saying, here are things that we're doing that could be useful to you, and it's a chance for the agency to say, here's the kind of work that would interest us. And you have an interaction that can lead the researchers to do things that are useful to the agency, but gives the agency greater awareness of the work that's out there. That could be done on an annual basis. It could be done more often than that. Just to look at all the researchers now who are writing about remedies, who are writing about ex post assessment, building data sets of the kind that we see in Latin America. That is a collaboration between academia and the world of enforcement that would be enormously fruitful, easy to carry forward. A second I'd mention is more work that's focused on functional areas. I think it would be intriguing to have a regular meeting that brings together the heads of legal services, the general counsels of individual agencies, to have their own workshop, to talk about common areas of concern. How do you advise your clients? How do you apply the agency's ethics rules? How do you prepare a good advocacy program? How do you decide when to fight in court, when to fold, when to settle? But to have topical subjects, and I think legal services would be a good one, where you have the membership of the network send its general counsels, its heads of legal services to work. Let me mention a last one. If we had to identify one factor that determines the success or failure of an agency more than anything else, it is the quality of leadership. A great leader can take a merely adequate institutional framework and elevate it. A great leader can take a good framework and make it excel. A bad leader can run even a good design onto the rocks. So where does good leadership come from and how do you perpetuate it? I think it would be very useful to have a formula similar to the training on demand where you have a new appointee have access to past agency heads, where the past agency heads say, if you give me 3 hours, I can teach you 5 things that will save your life. I can teach you 5 things that will make you famous by the end of the week. To share the know-how that is often accumulated only through practice. In short, to let the new appointee know on the spot, this is what I know today that I wished I'd known on day 1. I think that kind of training for new appointees would be extremely valuable, and it's the kind of thing that ICN could do with the remarkable resources, its alumni and its current officials at its disposal. These, I think, would be great extensions of the existing program.
Perfect, thank you. So we just need 1 more minute. I just have something to say on a personal matter. It has been an honor and a privilege to be in the Secretariat for a number of years, but as we've seen, the change has been flawless at both leadership roles. Our colleagues in the Chair's office at the Mexican National Antitrust Commission, Chair Andrea, Rodrigo, Edgar, and Paulina, are bringing new energy and empowerment in being inclusive to all the members. And I want all younger agencies to know to make your voices be heard. Please contact them and the Secretariat to make sure that the network could be even stronger. Of course, Renato and Michele, you've put me to shame on your professionalism and your work ethic, and the network is in a much better place with the Italians at the helm of the Secretariat of this network. Salamat po. And then finally, I would like to say the ICN functions much like a family. Its strength lies in ensuring that all members have a voice. So true institutional success requires actively listening to the full spectrum of member experiences, fostering collaboration rather than rivalry between established and emerging jurisdictions. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone, everyone to give a round of applause to the panelists. And I invite Dr. Simeon Kofefe, Executive Director of the ECOWAS Regional Competition Authority, to come and make an announcement.
All right. Thank you, Nigel. Thank you to everybody. I'm Simeon Kofi, the Executive Director of the ECOWAS Regional Competition Authority. It's a real pleasure to be here, and also I want to commend the tremendous work done by the ICN, and also appreciate the Philippine Competition Commission and its chairperson for the warm reception and also for the very good organization of this ICN 2026. The ECOWAS Regional Competition Authority is here to just deliver a small message and just say that you are a young competition authority and you learn a lot from the ASEAN conference and also the working group sessions. And you started our activities since 2029, and since then you are able to work to strengthen our regulatory framework and also institutional arrangement. And the message that I want to deliver is to inform you that you are going to organize our inaugural conference this year, 16 to 17 September. And I would like to invite all of you. I want to invite all of you to come to West Africa, to Banjul, Gambia, the country hosting our agency, and also partner with you to share with you insight on ECOWAS competition framework, and also to raise awareness around competition issues, and also address our market participants and policymakers that are going to attend this conference, and it's important to share your experiences with them, and also be able to provide them with key information on competition law enforcement. I think our region have many countries that are yet to have a strong competition regime, so it's important for you to come and assist and deliver some a message to them. So this is actually the message that I wanted to share with you while you are waiting and send to you official correspondences. Thank you.
Thanks, Kofi. So with that, we end.
Thank you very much, Dr. Coffee. Can I request for everyone who is on stage right now to please stay center stage for a photo op? Let's have one with Dr. Coffee. And then we will have another of our moderator and panelists. Can we have one with everyone? Let's have a photo op. Can we move a little bit more forward, please? Thank you for joining them, Dr. Coffee. And may we have another one with our panelists and moderator. Another photo op, please. And can I request for a round of applause from everyone for all those on stage and that great panel. Thank you all so much. And thank you, Nigel, for speaking in Tagalog. We loved hearing all of that. Thank you, sir. And now, ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the final part of this year's program, we are going to move on to a very special and meaningful moment in our conference. This marks the formal transition to the next chapter of the ICN journey. I know you're all excited to find out who will be hosting the 2027 ICN Annual Conference. Where will we gather next year, continuing the shared work, collaboration, and progress that define this network? Are you all ready to find out? Okay, I heard a few responses, so maybe I'll keep you waiting a little bit longer. Let me ask that question again. Are you all ready and excited to find out? Yes, okay. And with that, may we now invite to the stage Mr. Michael Aguinaldo of the Philippine Competition Commission and Ms. Andrea Marvan, ICN Chair, Commission Nacional Antimonopolio, Mexico. Let's give them a warm welcome, please. They have the answer to the question I've been posing to everybody. Here we go.
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. We're supposed to show you a video, but I haven't been cued if it's ready yet. Oh, it's ready? Okay, so before I give my closing remarks, we want to show you a video of the last 3 days. So you'll see yourself there on screen. So please enjoy.
Hello, friends and colleagues. It is a true honor to welcome all of you to the 2026 Annual Conference of the International Competition Network here in the vibrant city of Manila. Welcome.
Let me begin by welcoming you all to the 2026 ICN Annual Conference here in Manila, Philippines. We are honored that Manila has been chosen as the venue for this year's conference. And the Philippine Competition Commission is truly privileged to bring together competition authorities, policymakers, practitioners, and experts from across the globe to reaffirm the enduring value of cross-border cooperation in competition law.
A quarter of a century ago, this network was established with a clear vision to strengthen cooperation among competition authorities and to promote convergence toward global best practices. There have been challenges, but the ICN has thrived through them, and I am confident that we will continue to thrive and evolve.
The ICN Annual Conference is the culmination of many months of dedicated preparation and collaboration. I'd like to thank our distinguished speakers, panelists, and delegates who will share their insights over the coming days. Your participation is what sustains the ICN spirit of dialogue, cooperation, and the exchange of ideas across jurisdictions.
We have built a community, a network that is grounded in trust, in technical rigor, and a shared commitment to open and fair markets.
This is my third conference, but in the short time I have been involved with the ICN, I learned one thing. ICN is not an organization. As the chair mentioned, it's a community. It's the coming together of people with common and shared purposes.
The ICN has now consolidated its position as a unique forum for dialogue, debate, learning, and collective development. Over these 25 years, we have developed tools, recommendations, and analytical frameworks that have become international benchmarks.
Institutions like the ICN play an essential role in this effort. They provide a space where practitioners can build trust before crises arise, compare experiences before enforcement challenges become unmanageable, and develop common approaches while respecting domestic realities. Ultimately, the future of competition policy will depend on how well we navigate the tensions between national priorities and global interdependence, between strategic intervention and competitive discipline, and between fragmentation and cooperation. If we succeed, competition policy can help ensure that innovation remains open, market power remains accountable, and economic opportunity remains within reach for all.
The true value of the ICN lies not only in what we produce together, but in how we engage with each other. So ask questions, share the insights, build connections. This is your network, so please make the most out of it. Thank you to all of you.
Once again, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to join us in this year's conference. We are honored to host you here in the Philippines. We aim to please. We look forward to the conversations, ideas, partnerships, and relationships that will emerge over the coming days. Thank you so much. Good morning. Mabuhay po kayong lahat. And let the ICN Annual Conference begin. That's what they call the same-day edit. Well, 3-day edit, and anyway. Typically, you see that here in weddings. So this must have been a 3-day wedding. Okay. But again, a shout-out and maybe applause to the production team that were behind this. They finished it just in time for this. So I just want to spend my time to thank certain people. A lot of you have come up to me thanking me for this last 3 days, but there are really people you should thank. I'm just the figurehead up here. I'm just the big guy. But then there are people behind the scenes who did a lot of the heavy lifting. I won't be able to name all of them, but I will call some of them. And I hope they're in this room because I want them to come up so you can see who they are and acknowledge them. But let me start first with the offices and not the individuals. There are government agencies that helped us along the way. Department of Tourism and the Department of Tourism National Capital Region Office. They were very helpful to us. You know, if you had an escort from the airport, some of them were from tourism. Some of them were tourism students, actually. The Department of Health, you may have noticed, you know, in case, and I hope no one got sick or got injured, but they were there and ready. The Tourism Promotions Board for some of the materials. I think there were some giveaways yesterday. The Intramuros Administration for a welcome reception, and for the tour later, for those of you who are attending that. Bureau of Immigration for giving us a dedicated lane or allowing us to use it. The Metro Manila Development Authority, who handled the traffic and also provided some of your escorts to the welcome reception, which some of you found impressive. Yeah, it seemed like out of a Harrison Ford movie or something, no? The Philippine National Police, they were around to ensure that nothing happened. Someone was asking me during the welcome reception, I was one of the last to leave, and one of my friends was asking me, are all the security yours? I said, no, you know, I don't need that kind of security. But the real reason is they had them there. So, you know, we have all of you guests here. And the city mayor of Manila, who I also want to thank, said, okay, I'll provide whatever you need. And so without a hesitation, he provided security and other services. The local government of Pasay, which is where we're located, the barangay, which is the smallest political unit here, it's kind of like a very small village. They're in charge also of this area, and we thank them. And the city of Pasay, of course, as I mentioned. And then we have our private partners. A lot of the programs that you witnessed, like the husband and wife team who were singing last night, and the dancers, and the decor of the food, those were provided by events production company, okay, an events managing company, and they were responsible for all that, and their name is Positive Exposure Production Inc. And also you had the exhibits of goods. Some of you actually bought from them. We had the Total Exhibit and Expo Solutions Inc. The airport operator, our airport has been privatized, and so we thank the new NAIA Infracorp for allowing our people there to pick you up and assist you. The Manila Marriott, I'm pleasantly surprised. People are telling me the food was very good, and so credit to the Marriott. And Circle Transport Corporation that provided some of the vehicles that we used for transporting you. Now, from the PCC itself, our Communications and Knowledge Management Office, specifically the Capacity Building and Advocacy Division that was very instrumental in all these sessions that we did. Of course, my office, my staff were here full-time. The office of our Executive Director, Ken, over there, they were also doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And also our Finance Planning and Management Office, because we did need money and we had to make sure that we're not going to get a negative audit as a result of this. So we had them here to make sure they see what we were spending the money on. So thank you to them. And now there are a lot of individuals who really poured their heart and soul into this. And I can't call all of them because I don't think the stage will hold them. But I'd at least like to call some of them. They were heads of the different committees. Of course, let me start by our overall head, our Executive Director, Ken Tanate. Ken, please come over. Okay, Ken was overall in charge, and we would speak very often, you know, when it came to some decision making, but you know, all the nitty-gritty, you know, the difficult parts, it's him and his team, and I'd like to mention them. My Chief of Staff, actually, who Nigel was able to bamboozle into a skit earlier. Nina Mejia, please. Okay, and someone who I think was an ubiquitous presence throughout, EDCAN's Chief of Staff, Hubert Guamos. Hubert, where are you? He's running. Hubert really was our troubleshooter. You know, anytime someone had an issue or a problem, I'd go to him and say, Hubert, how will you deal with this? I'll take care of it. Okay, that's what Hubert was to this event. He took care of problems and so on. And then for some of the specific committees, I'd like to call protocol and VIP, person who was working with you to arrange that you'd be picked up from the airport. And so you'd have a seamless entry. We can't do Singapore yet. You know, their airport is amazing. We're not at that stage. I hope we get there someday, but in the meantime, we had to do things manually. So I'd like to call Vike Guillermo. Where are you? Okay, she's in hiding. Anyway, she's very shy. So anyway, thank you, Vike. And some of you know some of the people who were there, like Aimee and the rest. So, you know, we thank them. And then for procurement and logistics, we have Ann Alcala. Ann, where are you? Come forward, please. I want them to see who you are. And for the event creatives and production subcommittee, okay, let's wait for Ann so you can see her. Thank you, Ann. We have Aislinn Manuel. Aislinn or Aislinn, where are you? Are you here? Is that her running? Why are you all running? Well, they're running because they're working, actually, while we're doing this. So, come on, Aislinn. Yeah, everyone's waiting for you. Yeah, so I'm sure you've seen her around. You know, she was very busy. Yeah. Thank you, Aislinn. And then the registration, you come in, you register there, they have this whole setup. Lysel Varias, Lysel, are you around? She's actually fixing outside, so. But Lysel, we recognize you. And last but not the least, of course, there are a lot of people who work for them, and please give them a round of applause. Some of them are here. I just can't pull them up here, Andrea might look at me strange if I bring them all up here. So, but the last two that I want to mention, these are the ladies who did the heavy lifting. And they're the ones that I was very worried about, that they might have a nervous breakdown or what, because they really carried a big part of the load. Please come on stage, Ina Mangilin and Charmaine Escueta. Okay, this is Charms. And coming over here is Ina. So just to let you know, Ina was a winner yesterday at the World Bank thing. So, she's not just good at organizing. There is a lot of substance to her as well. So I just want you to recognize this, and the team, they're the ones you should thank, because they use their blood, sweat, and tears to make sure that you have a great conference, everything's convenient, and hopefully meaningful and memorable. Okay, so with that, again, I have to thank you for coming all the way over here. It's a very challenging moment in the world right now. But the fact that you were able to come here, beyond our expectations as to the number, I think we have something like 290 of you coming from abroad. And we weren't expecting that many given all these challenges, but we are so thankful. We hope you had a great conference. We hope everything went fine, and you still have some activities. But please be sure that you are all in our hearts. And we're very thankful that you came here and had a good time. So maraming salamat po.
Okay, I'll be very brief because we're running a little bit late. And there's not so much to say, except, dear friends, we have come to the closure of the 25th ICN Annual Conference. So let me just thank again our wonderful host, the Philippine Competition Commission, especially Chair Mike and his entire team. Yeah. You got a standing ovation. Well deserved. I am thankful that the video didn't show me dancing and but again, I will be very short, but thank you so much. From the moment we stepped our first foot out of the airplane, the hospitality, the attention, everywhere we looked, we were taken perfectly care about, and you didn't make us feel like we were in a convention center. We felt like we were inside Manila and we were living Manila. So that accomplishment is amazing, and it is all due to you, to your wonderful leadership, and to the entire team that helped all through you. So thank you. Over the past 3 days, this conference has definitely reminded us why ICN matters. For 25 years, the ICN has brought together competition authorities from around the world, not because we're identical, but because we have a common belief. Open, fair, and competitive markets create opportunities, strengthen economies, and improve people's lives. We did not have easy conversations here, and we were not expected to have these easy conversations. We did not all agree on everything, but this is exactly what the ICN at its core is, to bring together people with different perspectives, with different views, and to have respectful, meaningful conversations that will turn into experiences and that we can bring back home to help us live and to help us contribute to our missions agency, which is basically helping consumers. Following this idea, I would also like to recognize an important development in the ICN itself, which is the continued renewal and diversification of our leadership. So this week, we welcomed the new working group co-chairs who will guide the next phase of our work. Their appointment reflects not only continuity, but also the diversity of perspectives within this network. Here on the screen, you can see who will be the co-chairs for the next ICN year of each working group. So here's for the advocacy working group, for the agency effectiveness working group, for the cartel working groups, for the merger working groups, for the unilateral conduct working group, etc. I thank each and every one of these agencies because this implies a huge commitment and a huge amount of work to contribute to our main mission. So thank you and welcome to all of the co-chairs. We're excited to see which ICN products and works that we will have this year. So as I mentioned, in the 25th anniversary plenary session, we may not have a crystal ball to predict every change that lies ahead in the future for the ICN and the competition world, but we have something far more valuable, which is the collective experience and commitment represented in this very room. This gives me confidence that the ICN will remain a place where every member can help shape the future of competition policy in their country, but also to contribute around the world. Let me again finish by expressing my sincere gratitude to the PCC, once again. Their passion, their generosity, we all felt it, and I think you made a memorable ICN conference. And as we conclude our time in the Philippines, we also look ahead with great anticipation with the next chapter of our shared work. And for that, I am very pleased to announce, drumroll, the host of the 2027 ICN Annual Conference, which next year will gather under the leadership of the Portugal's Competition Authority. So for that, I welcome Nuno to the stage. You can hand it over. Mike, you're free. Yes, Nuno, the floor is absolutely yours. But before, I just want to say that Portugal is a big ally of the ICN. Portugal and Nuno personally, with his team, have shown a huge compromise to the ICN. And for that, we are very excited to be next year. And we hope to see all of you next year in Portugal. Nuno, please, the floor is yours.
Well, esteemed colleagues and friends, you were supposed to make a surprise face, so nobody's surprised. It's weird because last year I did a surprise face in Edinburgh, although I already knew that it was the Philippines. So this is becoming to be the worst kept secret in the ICN world, because everyone knows in advance. Well, let me start by thanking Michele and his team at the Philippines Competition Commission for the excellent organization, the warm hospitality, and the inspiring discussions. Really, Manila has raised the bar and possibly hidden the ladder. So please join me in the round of applause again to Michele and his team. In fact, and at this moment, I think that following this amazing ICN, I had three options. The first would be to propose the Philippines to be the permanent host of the ICN annual meeting. But Bekelmy told me that he would not accept, and he would quit. So the second option would be to pass on to another authority, or not to pass on to consumers, but to another authority. But here, Andre didn't allow me and told me that I had committed already. So then my team told me that I should keep calm and carry on. So I believe in the capacity of my amazing team to organize next year ICN annual meeting. So I feel like I'm in the Olympics. Yes, it's true. Portugal will organize next year ICN annual meeting. And I have the pleasure and the honor to tell you that we will be hosted in Lisbon, more precisely in Estoril, which is a small village just outside the city, that it's close enough to claim Lisbon, but it's far enough to enjoy the ocean breeze. So let me tell a little bit about the Estoril history, because Estoril is not just a scenic, it has a past worth of a thriller. Estoril, and you have to remind that Portugal was neutral during the Second World War, so because of that, Estoril was a hub of spies, intrigue, and quiet diplomacy. In fact, Ian Fleming lived in Estoril, got inspired by Estoril to write the 007 books. And also a film of 007 on Her Majesty's Secret Service was filmed in Estoril. But be reassured, you won't need to have a tuxedo there, so it will be a very relaxed ICN meeting. Nevertheless, Estoril has been called the Portuguese Riviera, as it's just a short drive from Lisbon overlooking the Atlantic. And Estoril was also famous because it has a Formula One Grand Prix in the past, in the 80s and in the 90s. So you should prepare yourself to be in the pole position of the World Competition Conferences. And a little bit of the Portuguese history. I will tell you a small story about us in Portugal. In the 15th and in the 16th century, Portugal ruled the world. I think we are very proud of our history. And by then we were ruling the world, but the Spanish were always running after us, so they thought that they were also ruling the world. So what we did with the Spanish in 1496 is that we decided to split the world in two. This is a real story. So we did the Tordesillas Treaty, and Kanye, you're here to recognize that, and we decided to split the world in two. But the Portuguese took the best part. So we stayed with the maritime route to India because of the spices, and we stayed with the Philippines, actually. But then a few years after, the Spanish took the Philippines. I know why now. I think we should have stayed with the Philippines instead. But yes, so this was 5 centuries ago, but 5 centuries have gone, and here we are now. And Portugal now is no longer trying to divide the world, but to unite the world. So we are now trying to unite the world, the Portuguese authority, by bringing the ICN community to Portugal in order to keep our work together and keep us inspired to have more fair, open, and contestable markets. So once again, the ICN annual conference remains the true ex libris of the global competition encounters. I would call it really the Formula One Grand Prix of the competition conferences worldwide. So the Portuguese Competition Authority is committed, as always, to promote an open and constructive dialogue with its peers. And in this context, and in my capacity as ICN Vice Chair and the President of the Portuguese Authority, ADC, it's a great honor to welcome this major event once again in Portugal. And you have to remind that 10 years ago, we received in Oporto an ICN event which still is in the memories of many people that are here in this room. And Estoril will be the perfect setting. It practically breeds competition with its Formula One heritage. So start your engines, prepare yourselves, put yourself in pole position, and follow once again the route of the Portuguese sailors, this time from Manila to Lisbon, to join us and save the dates between the 18th and the 21st of May 2027 for the ICN annual conference in Estoril. But first, I have a short video. I also have a video to show you, like you, Michele. No spoilers, but I hope that it increases your willingness to attend, because we really did our best efforts in this video. It took a lot of work from my team to do this video. So again, thank you so much. I very much look forward to welcome you in Estoril in 2027, which is near Lisbon. So don't get confused, because you're going to see the video, which is about Lisbon and Estoril, same airport, very, very close, so no worries. And I hope to see you in Israel, where we'll have the time to continue this conversation. And so let's look at the video, and thank you once again for joining us in Lisbon in 2027.
In a world in constant transformation, we remain connected across continents, across time, through dialogue. Every year, this global network comes together. In 2027, it comes to Lisbon, a city between continents where tradition and innovation meet, a place shaped by movement, by ideas, by exchange, where dialogue takes form. Different rhythms coexist, one shared direction. As a proud member of the ICN, Portugal is honored to host the annual conference.
Dear ICN members, dear friends, welcome to the headquarters of the ADC, where we work to ensure that markets remain open, fair, and contestable. This is where we engage with colleagues from around the world, where preparations for the ICN 2027 annual conference are underway. Next year, the Global Competition Dialogue will find a new home, this time in the wonderful city of Lisbon. We'll give stage to global convergence, shaping the future of competition, our future. As hosts, we invite you to experience our country, connect with our people, and join in constructive exchanges, advancing our shared efforts to promote competition and strengthen international cooperation. So see you in Lisbon in 2027.
On the edge of Lisbon, along the Atlantic, Estoril defines the Portuguese coast, a natural meeting point between Europe and the ocean. We look forward to welcoming you.
Once again, congratulations to our host for the 2027 ICN Annual Conference. Another round of applause, please. And we are truly excited for what lies ahead, and we look forward to another year of meaningful conversations, collaboration, and continued progress for our global competition community. And now, as we come to the close of the International Competition Network Annual Conference 2026, allow me to extend our deepest gratitude to every single one of you. A round of applause for yourselves, please. For this beautiful gathering of like minds. Over the past 4 days, we have brought together an exceptional community of competition authorities, policymakers, experts, and partners from across the world, sharing insights, exchanging experiences, and strengthening our collective commitment to fair and competitive markets. From discussions on digital transformation to exploring agency capacity, effectiveness, and tools, and ultimately to how we translate these into real-world implementation, this conference has been a powerful reminder of what we can achieve when we come together with a shared purpose. More than the sessions, it is the connections that we have built, the ideas that we have sparked, and the collaborations we have strengthened that will continue to resonate long after today. Before we officially conclude, just a quick reminder for the members of the steering group, your lunch meeting will commence in a bit or right after this. It will be at the 3rd floor VIP East Boardroom. Once again, that's the steering group. Kindly accomplish the event evaluation form. Evaluation form may be accessed through the annual conference website and the mobile app. Your feedback is highly valuable and will greatly improve future ICN events. We would love to hear from you. Again, to all of the delegates joining the cultural tour, please claim your shirt at the registration area before departure, and please don that for the cultural tour. Assembly time at the Marriott Grand Ballroom lobby is at 1:45 sharp 45 minutes from now. Wear your cultural tour shirt as well as your ID badge. Pack light and bring water tumblers. Comfortable shoes are highly recommended. You may also bring your abanico or your portable fan. That's the local fan. A cap, an umbrella, towel, tissues or wipes, and alcohol. Light snacks, alcohol for disinfection. Not any other kind of alcohol, just in case we still have a hangover from last night. And light snacks will be provided during the tour. And with that, it has been my absolute pleasure and honor being your host the last 2 days. My name is Jelly Victor. Thank you so much. Thank you for being part of the ICN Annual Conference 2026. Please enjoy a well-deserved lunch, and we can't wait for you to experience our cultural tour. Have a wonderful day and safe travels abroad. Good afternoon, everyone.